how we're moving forward. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. And what I would love to do is start with the university community, in particular, Dr. Robinson, if we could start with you and then and just give a quick update. And then President Murdaugh, and as President Thrasher joins us as well. If not, Liz, if you wouldn't mind giving an FSU update as well. And then we do the usual round robin. Mr. Chairman, give us an update on the county, and Superintendent and Chairwoman Rasmussen, the school board, and I'll give a quick update on the city. Higher education, you are more than welcome to stay on to hear what's going on in your local community as well. I also know that you're extremely busy, so if you need to get off after your presentation, that's fine as well. But why don't we go ahead and start?
Hey,
President
Mayor,
Robinson, first,
Mayor,
let me,
Mayor,
sure.
Mayor, this is John Thrasher. I'm on now on the phone.
Excellent, President Thrasher. Appreciate it. You are on with Chairman Desloge from the county, the administrator, Vince Long,
Right.
the city manager, Reese Go, myself. You have DeeDee Rasmussen, chairwoman of the school board, the superintendent, Hanna, Dr. Robinson from FAMU, President Robinson, President Murdaugh, Dr. Murdaugh from TCC, and you and Liz as well from Florida State. Thank you for joining us. But Dr. Robinson, if you wouldn't mind, first of all, let me say thank you. Your walk-up clinic that you have created with the state in partnership has been a tremendous success. And we certainly do appreciate your efforts and what you all have been doing to complement everything else in the community. With that, Dr. Robinson, if I could just turn it over to you and whatever update that you have and what is on your mind or any questions that you have, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Mayor Dailey, and I want to thank Commissioner Desloge and all of you who have given us this opportunity to give you a brief update on where we are and where we might be going and regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to thank you for recognizing that the walk-up clinic at FAMU is indeed a partnership. I appreciate the role that the city has played, the county has played, Department of Health and other state agencies have played in making this possible. By the end of this week, we should be well over, if not by the end of the day, having served 5,000 individuals. Currently, we can test up to 400 persons a day, double where we started 2 weeks ago, and we pretty much doubled the amount of time we are going to be out there at least until May the 21st. But that is a partnership effort, and I want to commend you, Mayor Dailey, and all of you who have come by the site to be tested to continue to encourage others to come. With regard to our operations, we, like everybody else on the phone, had to make a major transformation from our routine mode of instruction to remote education in about a week's time, back in mid-March. And perhaps if there was one thing that gave us an advantage is that by the time we knew we had to change our operational mode, our students were leaving for spring break. So they gave us an opportunity to prepare for this new reality that we find ourselves in now, where we had transitioned to where we probably had around 10% or less of our classes online to 100%. And we did all of that in terms of the training and the resources needed for faculty and students in that week or the 10-day period. And we continue to work on that. Currently, we're in with regard to our instructional activities, we're in a distance remote operational mode through the end of the summer. With regard to our staff and faculty, it's on a need basis who might be on the campus for certain things. There's some research laboratories that we're allowing to operate because there's some sensitive issues there that must be maintained. But we have allowed no students, other than those that had been in dormitories, to stay on the campus following spring break. As we had some preliminary discussions prior to the meeting opening up, we are, like everyone else around the nation, are looking at what the world might look like in the future. And the good thing is that we're part of a system that's working using the expertise that they have, as well as that of the 12 public institutions in the state of Florida, to develop a blueprint for how we might move forward. We also have an internal sort of continuity of operations team that will be advising me on the details of how FAMU will operate within that framework that we hope will be forthcoming in the near future. So we are looking at bringing some employees back to work as we prepare for what realities might happen this fall. But I just want everybody to know on this call and listening that no final decisions in terms of how we are going to operate past the summer, and certainly in terms of instruction has been determined yet at this time. But we are working vigorously to develop a framework that allowed us to operate in a way that's as safe as possible in the event that things do change for the upcoming fall semester. Thank you.
Excellent. President Robinson, is there anything that we could do immediately to support the walk-up clinic?
Yeah, I really think that that clinic needs to be there permanently or throughout the duration of this pandemic. Certainly as we talk about bringing some potential large number of students and faculty and staff back to our campuses, and as businesses throughout Tallahassee and Leon County are reopening as well. I think having access to that will give us not just comfort, but a little bit more assurance in what's happening regarding any new developments around the pandemic itself. If more people are being impacted and so forth. So I think that needs to be around. So one of the things we had consensus around, as you look at how our universities might operate, is that there will need to be some form of testing and contact tracing during any operations that we envision happening, this fall. And so having your support, that of the county and others to support that facility, we think is critical moving forward. So anything you can do to help encourage those at the state and other places who are in this partnership with us to continue that support, I think would be of great value. We talked about the economic issues around restarting. That's tremendous when you think about the cost for PPE, disinfecting and so forth. Those are costs that we didn't have in our budgets. And then there's the real potential of losing revenue. We've looked at several projections of potential losses in enrollment because families might want to keep their sons and daughters closer to home, as you might imagine. But then there's the reality of the economic impact of that 33 million plus persons who are out of work as a result of the pandemic directly, due to the demographics we serve, the socioeconomic status that they're in. Those impacts are going to influence whether families can send their kids back to us to school this fall and perhaps for some time after that. And that's going to sort of be there's an immediate impact on families now, but I think it's going to be with us for a while because the demographic that we serve will likely suffer disproportionately, and it will take them longer to recover economically.
Excellent. Any other questions for Dr. Robinson right now? Feel free to jump in. Dr. Robinson, appreciate it. Dr. Murdaugh, you want to provide an update out of, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Desloge, you had a question?
Just a shout out. I went by yesterday and got tested, Dr. Robinson, and it was 15 minutes all in from the time I walked up to the time I walked out. I mean, kudos to the National Guard and to Bond and to your staff. I mean, it's a well-run organization. We just need to get the word out. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Dr. Murdaugh, would you like to provide an update on Tallahassee Community College?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd love to. First and foremost, let me echo what President Robinson said about how much we appreciate all of you locally who have continued to support us and continue to make our community safer. And so for some of the decisions that you have had to make in city and county government, thanks so much for that. Brent, we like FSU and FAMU. We're fortunate in terms of timing because we chose to act quickly, and before spring break, we had already made the decision and made the announcement to our faculty, staff, and students that we would be moving to remote working and going online for our courses. So we had spring break to spend a great deal of time having our faculty go through online training sessions to help them make the transition. We're very lucky. We're very well positioned in terms of our technologies. So our faculty are now 100% online. But the exciting thing for me, after doing a number of surveys of our students, we discovered what we probably all know is that a significant percentage of our students need and want what we will call synchronous online learning, not the asynchronous where we send them something and they get to do it and then they turn it in later. So we invested heavily in expanding our Zoom licenses and other software licenses so that our faculty had the tools to be able to provide that synchronous education from the safety of their homes. Couple things I'd like to point out. Early on, our foundation engaged in a significant fundraising campaign, brought in over $50,000. The significance of that was that for our demographic, a significant number of our students did not have devices. And for us to say to them, gee, you're now going to be learning in an online remote capacity was a real challenge. And so we purchased laptops, we purchased food cards, we bought gift cards at local restaurants to try to help the economy. As you know, we have the issue of food insecurity just as K-12 faces. It doesn't stop when they graduate from K-12 and come to us. So we did a lot of really good things early on. And one of the things I will share with those of you in the city and the county where you could be helpful for us, that we were able to get devices into the hands of students very quickly. And this is not a shock for you, but you've asked what you can do. It's the access to the internet. It's the Wi-Fi capabilities. Superintendent Hanna will talk, I'm sure, about the hot spots he's put on buses. But frankly, I think the weakest spot in us being able to be effective in online is not being able to provide devices, but being able to provide connectivity. So I know it's an issue for you. I know it's an issue, and I hope you keep working it. So quickly sort of pivoting to fall. So we're doing summer live. We call it summer live. It's all synchronous. For fall, we are planning for us to have some face-to-face instruction back on our campus. But here's the more interesting thing for me. Our team has rallied and made a significant commitment that we don't want to, quote, go back to normal. It's not even a desire. Most of my folks, I'll say some of our folks, would certainly love to go back to normal. We don't see that. We don't see that in the future of the community college system. We don't see it in the future of our college. And so we are really looking for opportunities to shift the model for what we do in order to provide education to students. We will have some online classes and we will have some in-person classes and we will have some other models. There's some really interesting models on flex, on polysynchronous, on a variety of other things, and we're exploring all of them. We are rapidly exploring how to transform the experience a student has using some of the online tutoring, online chatbots, online all kinds of things that are available to try to help personalize the experience a student has. And we want to do it in a different way. Now, our biggest challenge, and it's a challenge that the school district will have with Lively, is career and technical education. You know, we did and can go easily online with what I'll call credit coursework. But when you start talking about welding and commercial truck driving and law enforcement and nursing, you start talking about those programs. Those are not programs you easily transition to online. And so we're working with experts in both inside the college and in the community to try to determine what's the best way forward to get us back into the right frame of mind and the right delivery system to provide those skills. Another request I would make of you all is to help us identify when the tide comes back in and all those folks in our community who have lost jobs seek reemployment. We're trying to forecast what those jobs are going to be and what we as an institution need to be able to do, prepared to do, to give them the training and the skills to do those jobs. So we need information from you all. We need information from the business community. We're working with the chamber, but we would welcome you all telling us as well, where do you think we're going to be coming back? And more importantly, we're trying to have conversations, and we need your input on those conversations about what are the jobs post-COVID. They're not necessarily the same jobs pre-COVID. And so we welcome the opportunity to get your feedback, your advice, your input as to where we need to skate to, not just return to. Thank you very much.
Good point. Jim, I want to thank you. I know that you have been working directly with TMH, especially at the very early stages of COVID when we really didn't know what we were looking for. You offered and opened the Gadsvini Center, heaven forbid if it was needed in this community or is needed in this community. And we certainly do appreciate it. That's being a great community partner. And thank you.
Well, thanks for that. And you know, we've also donated tons of PPE. We have purchased additional 3D printers. We have printed now hundreds of N95 masks using our 3D printers and distributed those. We've given ventilators to TMH. We, as you know, John, I always like to say we are a community resource, not just a community college. And so thank you for that shout out.
Yeah. Any questions for President Murdaugh? President Thrasher, thank you for joining. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a question?
Mr. Mayor, this is DeeDee Rasmussen. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Not really a question, just a ditto to the comments of President Murdaugh on the internet, some sort of a canopy for internet access and the food. Everything he said, I just wanted to affirm that the Leon County School District is facing actually the same complications and concerns. So, thank you.
Good point. Seeing no other questions, President Murdaugh, thank you so much. President Thrasher, thank you for joining us. The innovation coming out of Florida State during this time is also amazing. I know y'all have been working on PPE and other creative measures to add to the community. We certainly do appreciate it. Thanks for joining the call. If you wouldn't mind just giving us an update on where you are.
All the other folks that are on here, appreciate it. The opportunity to do this. We've been working hard on and I'm sure Dr. Robinson, and I echo many of his comments, congratulate him also for the wonderful work they're doing out at FAMU for the testing. We've been working, and Larry will tell you, probably having 2 or 3 conversations a week with our fellow colleagues around the state in the state university system and Chancellor Kreiser to talk about, the best practices and to try to understand, what would it take to open our universities as safe as possible in the fall. Everybody, I think, understands we're all doing remote for the summer. In fact, our summer courses have started. Got some numbers the other day, or yesterday, really. We expect, our summer enrollment to be exactly where we thought it would be for summer ABF and law school. And those classes are underway remotely. We've also registered 2,200 new freshmen to begin their college careers on Summer C, which is our largest summer session. So that's a good sign, I think, that young people and their families want to continue their education and want to do it where they wanted to go, and that's Florida State University. So we're happy about that. We're obviously still working on our plan and different models for the fall, as everybody else is. I think Larry and all of our discussions, Larry would agree, have centered around what we can do when we bring the students back to bring them back safely as possible. And underlying that is testing and tracing. We are going to probably make a final decision tomorrow on creating our own testing lab at Florida State, maybe in conjunction with some other folks, I don't know, but where we could actually have a turnaround from a test in less than 8 hours, and in essence a day. We think if you can do that and then do the right kind of tracing where there have been instances of exposure, that'll help us tremendously to keep the numbers down if in fact it happens. We're also working, and part of that is curriculum. I think Larry or Jim, one of the two, talked about a hybrid where we have some remote classes and where we have some face-to-face classes. We're working on that. There are implications, obviously, to our faculty. I asked the provost just the other day how many of our faculty members are over 65, and a considerable number are, probably more than 20%. Their president's actually over 75, so that's even more dangerous than that. But we've got to take that into consideration because there are some faculty members who are not going to want to necessarily come back in the fall. So we're having to balance that with the ability to remote teach. I will say this, and I'll echo everything Jim and Larry said. Our faculty and theirs obviously stepped up to the plate when it came to providing in a very short term remote teaching for the end of this last semester. It was amazing. The kids, I think, embraced it. The faculty embraced it. They're continuing to understand how unique remote teaching is and how important it is in terms of content. So we're planning, and along with the rest of the universities in the system, trying to figure out what's the best model, if you will, for that. Included in that, by the way, is housing. We can house about 7,000 students on our campus. That's of a number of about 42,000. So the rest of them are dispersed around the community. If many of them we think will come back, even if they do remote learning, we think they'll come back to Tallahassee for whatever reasons. You can probably picture a number of reasons. But one of the things that obviously concerns us about is that some of the models that we're using will not allow us to have a full complement of our residence halls occupied. And so we're working on different models and percentages, trying to make sure that we have probably at least one area where we could isolate some kids if they do get the virus. We think that's going to be important to the families. But ultimately, going back to testing, I think that, to me, is going to be one of the keys that allow us to reopen. If we can do that successfully, if we can communicate that to the families who are getting ready to send their kids back to Florida State University and our other institutions of higher learning, if we can communicate that and that we have as we've done as well as we can to create a safe environment, I think we'll have some good success there. I know Mayor Dailey and others have called me and asked me about what the community could do. So I'm going to be pretty specific about that. We will have a fair number of kids coming back. Larry or Jim both mentioned, I think, jobs. Kids are going to need jobs. They work. A lot of them do work in the community. And to the extent that the community could open up, where they can, a lot of that is a chicken and an egg thing. I realize that with the governor's plan and how quickly and how much we open. But jobs are going to be important to these young people. And I think the second thing is having the community understand, as Jim said, I think, this is not going to be like it was. This is not going to be the way it was. This is a new normal, as everybody likes to use that word, but it truly is. We're going to need their help in the businesses and the community to make sure that they help us communicate the need for the simple things of social distancing, of masks, of no big events. I read an incident or article yesterday about one person passing on to at least 100 other people the disease of the virus. And we've got to make sure that everybody understands that it's not going to be like it was. And the community can help us in that. And I think the businesses can help us in that. I know, Bryan, you and I have talked about that extensively. And I should have said this at the beginning. Thank you all for everything you're doing to support all of our institutions and to make sure that we get back to where we need to be in Tallahassee and our higher education institutions. Larry talked about the finances. Everybody has taken a hit. Federal government has helped out considerably, particularly we've distributed, I know Larry has, and I'm sure Jim has, money to a lot of our students who are Pell eligible or close to Pell eligible based on that criteria. We have almost $14 million that we're ultimately going to distribute. We have another $14 million that we can use for things that we've already had perhaps some revenue losses in, such as returning money for housing, returning money for meal plans, the loss of revenue from our summer, as well as our international programs. So those are things. I know the federal government's looking at another tranche of money. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. Also understand the governor is still sitting on the budget, rightfully so, I think, to find out exactly, what impact the current environment is going to have on the budget. And I think I would anticipate that he would sign that budget in June, and we'll all be on our way to figuring out what we need to do for the following year at that point in time. Everybody, just about 100%, unless you haven't been around Tallahassee much, and I'm sure Larry's the same way. What are we going to do about football this fall? And I'd be damned if I know. I don't know the answer to that. I wish I could tell you. I read an interesting article this morning when I got up from the president of Auburn University, Larry. I don't know if you saw that or not. He did a press conference yesterday. He's planning on reopening in the fall, have all the organizations going on, all the rush for fraternities and sororities, football opening up, everything like that. I don't know what world he's living in, but it's not one that I think it's appropriate right now. But we're going to look at everything we can to look at the aspects of athletics. But obviously, we're going to take into consideration our student athletes and their health and welfare. And I think, honestly, that everything about football and other types of sports will be driven on a national basis, from the NCAA down to our conferences and certainly to our own states. There's some schools I've talked to and some presidents I've talked to that don't want to have football this fall, believe it or not. I know living down here, that's hard to believe, but there are. So it's going to be a complicated issue if we do it, and when we do it, and how we do it. We're working on that. David Coburn's doing a great job in that regard. I think again, we go back to our goal is to open our university up as safely as we can, with an understanding that when the kids do come back here, they'll have a safe environment to work in. It's our job then to make sure they're educated and understand that this is a very complex virus, and one that is easily transmittable, and one that we're going to have to be very cautious about when we come back. That's about the overview there.
Any questions for President Thrasher? Well, I will say, if there is a silver lining to the situation we're in, President Thrasher, Murdaugh, and President Robinson, I do think that's had a positive impact on your concerns with the scooter program here in Tallahassee. Yeah. You all have expressed concern to me personally about it, and well, I think we've seen a lull in the program right now. So if there is a,
I haven't seen many on campus. I haven't seen many on campus.
There you go. Well, and I appreciate you addressing athletics. That is on a lot of people's minds in Tallahassee, of what are our institutions going to do in the fall. Just out of curiosity, because I'm not clear, are those decisions, is it a combination of a local decision? Each one of you with your institution obviously will weigh in. Does it come down from the NCAA? Is it by how do those decisions about the sports operate?
I'll be happy to go from my perspective. First of all, our whole thing is going to be driven by where the governor thinks we need to be. He hadn't really come out yet and talked specifically about higher education, but my guess is at some point he will come out and say, we want our universities to open, our public universities and our colleges. And I think when he does that, he's going to defer then to the oversight boards, the Board of Governors in respect to the universities, and the college systems board. And I think let them kind of set a large parameter for what they think minimally ought to be done, and then allow us as institutions to kind of come up with the best approach to that, because obviously every institution is different. You know, in our SUS system, Larry will tell you, we have some universities that have 1,000 people, New College and Florida Polytech. They have a totally different environment than we do. Tallahassee is a different place than Orlando, where University of Central Florida is, or Tampa in South Florida. So our circumstances are going to be a little bit different. But I want to be driven by what the governor's broad guidelines are, what our board of governors say, what my board of trustees think is appropriate, and that goes for athletics also. But athletics, I think, is going to have to take a more national approach, because you know, for instance, the Atlantic Coast Conference, which Florida State plays in, is located in 10 different states, and you know, that could be a real problem for some states to start at the same time we start. And so it's going to be there's a lot of underbelly to this in respect to how we get started on all that.
Yes, sir. President Robinson, I thought you were going to weigh in as well.
Well, I think John said it appropriately. Making decisions about athletics is not just a local decision. I started the day with the presidents and chancellors of the MEAC conference that we're in. And similar to the ACC and most major conferences, we are in a multi-state platform, and different states might have different ideas about it. But ultimately, we have to hear from the NCAA with regard to setting some general guidelines around it. So that might give some encouragement, momentum to states to say something about it. But in the end, I can't go to North Carolina to play a football game if the governor of North Carolina doesn't think those two institutions we play up there ought to be open or have an athletic event. I do want to also, you know, expand on one point that John made regarding the CARES Act. And the first thing is, I want to say how much we appreciate what our representatives in Washington have done to support higher education through those monies. You know, we received $12 million in the first round of money, half of which goes to students, and 6.5 goes to support operational losses as a result of things that we had to do. However, those monies do not make us whole. In other words, they do not cover the full expense loss that we've suffered as a result. For example, we reimbursed students who had housing, you know, fees incurred and meal plans. However, it doesn't make up for the loss of all of the revenue for students who would have purchased food and other things on our campus during the period that we've been in this shutdown mode. And when all of the dust settles, I want to make sure everybody understands how much we appreciate those monies. But we still have a huge gap to make up. And the longer we're in this mode, a lot of the revenue from those sources of, you know, of spending and purchasing from not just students, but even people in the community who came to venues on campus to purchase food and other items, that revenue has also been lost as well.
Dr. Murdaugh, final comments?
Regarding athletics, we're in a very different position than the universities are. Certainly, we're going to be looking for guidance coming out of the Commissioner of Education as well as the Department of Education. But you know, the financial impact for us is not as significant a driver as it is for them, meaning FSU and FAMU. It's sort of funny to me. We're governed by the NJCAA, and they put out a memorandum indicating that they were lifting the travel ban. And so for me, I have a whole different perspective on it than maybe John and Larry. That's nice that they've lifted that. That doesn't mean we're going to do that. We're going to continue to be cautious until we see the flattening of the curve and until the data starts being far more favorable. So I don't see our decisions with regard to athletics are really very different than the huge pressures. Frankly, I'm grateful that I don't have these huge pressures that John and Larry have. Like Larry, I'm incredibly grateful to the federal government. We were able to to distribute several $1 million to our students already, which is wonderful. It's a real lifeline. But a couple points, it is not recurring dollars that we're receiving. So it's extremely helpful right now, whether it's the student piece or the institutional monies that are coming to all of our colleges and universities. My concern, frankly, and this is again an area where we could ask for your help, I believe the legislature at some point is going to have to come back and look at cutting budgets. And we will be included in that conversation about what to cut. I hope they don't consider these CARES Act dollars as something as part of their consideration of cutting ongoing operational budgets of colleges and universities. So since we sit in Tallahassee and you all are involved in lobbying sometimes downtown, please help us carry that message. This is really useful. I think it, again, I'm going to use the institutional portion of the dollars, not only to help students, but also to transform what the future of our college looks like. And that's a positive thing. Doesn't help me in terms of my operational dollars, doesn't replace the lost revenue from enrollment declines. And I hope the legislature will be sensitive to that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Any final questions or comments from everybody else that's on the video? Well, gentlemen, I think it goes without saying that we love each and every one of your institutions. We support your institutions. You play an incredible role. We are committed, and I think I speak for the county and the school board as well, to maintaining open lines of communication. We do want to support you. Let's just stay in touch so that we're all on the same page moving forward. And if there's anything that we can do, please let us know. You are more than welcome to stay on. We're going to move over to the county for their update, then the school board, then the city. I also understand if you need to go ahead and get off, please do what you need to do. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for putting this together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And with that, Bryan, Vince, let's turn it over to the county. Why don't y'all provide an update on where we are and what we have going on?
All right. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And thanks to the university presidents for all you've done. And before everybody checks out on that side, I mean, I think my message for today is if there's, and it's been repeated a couple times, if there's anything that the community can do in helping that decision as far as what the students do in the fall, it's a game changer for us in this community. It is the economic driver. It is the biggest economic driver in our community. And if there's short of financial help, but if there's anything that's an impediment to y'all making that decision, we want to make sure we're fully vested. We want you there. President Thrasher, your comment about jobs is well taken. And I would say that if the students come back, not only will we find jobs, but they create jobs. I mean, a lot of the restaurants and a lot of the bars and a lot of the hospitality industries are waiting to see what happens. And so if there's anything we can do as a community, at the county, at the city, I think we all stand ready and willing to go. So I thank y'all for your support, and we just want to make that decision as easy as possible. And now rather than later, if there's something that we can do or kind of get in front of, we'd love to hear from you if there are things that are being done. I know around the country, from what I can see, it's kind of on and off. Some universities and schools are saying we're absolutely open, and some are saying we're not. And I know y'all have a timeline you're working in. Dr. Robinson and I were talking about, how that's going to play out. So my primary plea is just let us know what you need from us. We'd like to see it be a decision that we'd love to have the schools open up this fall. With that, a couple of just comments. The EOC has been open over. Thank you, President Thrasher and Dr. Robinson. And I don't know if I don't see Jim on my screen, and Dr. Murdaugh. The EOC has been open over 60 days. Hats off and kudos to both Reese and Vince. You guys have been working nonstop, and I can't tell you how nice it is to have a team like that helping drive things. It's made my life a lot easier. I made a comment earlier. I went to Bragg Stadium yesterday. It was flawless. I mean, I walked up, I was in, I was out 15 minutes. And I think it gives people a sense of comfort. The people that don't have the ability to get to a doctor, don't have the ability to drive anywhere, they walk up, they can get tested. And if that gives them some sense of comfort, then that's a big help. We're struggling, as are y'all, I'm sure, with a lot of the governance issues. Our new county attorney has been working triple time trying to figure out all the sunshine issues, all the public input issues, all the different governance issues, not just around meeting and actually driving the bus. And we've had some spirited debates about public input and should we or shouldn't we stop the business that we're in an effort to wait until we can get the open town hall face-to-face things. I mean, I know it's worn out, but the new norm is we may never get to another packed, room full of people that are wearing T-shirts. Like it or not, that's just probably not in the near future, maybe in the never future. So we're dealing with that and trying to work through it. A couple of things we touched on earlier. OEV and Christina Paredes' group has put a committee together, and I'm a little hesitant to start putting any other committees until we use them representing the business community, representing most of the facets of our community. Let's get back to work. How do we get back? How do we manage the business side of things when the doors start opening up? We're obviously going to follow the governor's lead and wait to see how that plays out. I think he's been doing a nice job. And then, John, just on a personal note, so we're going to lay the entire pandemic at the foot of the scooter industry, because I'm thinking that's what. Anyway, no, I've said it before, and I'll say that you see what people are made of in the toughest of times, and I'm really proud to be a member of this community. It's been inspiring to watch the different groups in this community really step up and lead. And thank y'all, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Superintendent, and all the staff, DeeDee, and everybody for all you've done. So that's it for us. Thank you. Vince, anything you want to add? I don't think you're not there. Wait, you muted yourself. He muted yet.
How about now?
Now, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was trying to say good morning to you earlier, but I was on mute then too. So you'd think after thousands of conference calls, we'd get the hang of this. But Mr. Chairman, I think you covered a lot of it. Just thanks to everybody, all the partners. Bryan, you're right. 65 days. Who's counting on the emergency management and EOC operations? We continue to stay focused on, our life, health, safety issues primarily, and all of our mitigation strategies. Of course, as we all, and I know this can be said for everybody, slowly transition from the strict physical distancing into our phased reopening following the gating criteria and all of that. You all know this, but hospital surge planning is done, as I think the mayor mentioned earlier, in cooperation with TCC and the Gasvini Center. We've got that capacity should we need it. You all know our homelessness situation, and we've got plans in place to take care of both congregate as well as isolating COVID positive homeless folks in our community if we need to. We are, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we closed out the small business grant, and the deadline for the nonprofit grant is tomorrow. 500,000, over 500,000 PPEs we've distributed to the community. Our messaging thus far, which is really important in our communications with the community, over 11 million unique touches there. And of course, we're getting ready for hurricane season. So that's something to look forward to. And unlike our partners in academia, we have not received any CARES Act funding at the county level. We continue to spend a lot of money, and necessarily so. But anyway, suffice to say, this is all going to have a very, very significant budget impact to us at the local level. And we've moved our budgeting calendar out to late summer. We usually start a lot earlier so that we have a better picture of the revenues and if there will be any state or federal assistance coming our way. And with that does it for me.
Right. Vince, Bryan, y'all are doing a tremendous job. You really are. Very proud of the county. Very proud of how you're moving forward. The EOC is a well-oiled machine. Thank you for stepping up to the plate and putting together the action plan through the EOC dealing with those who are experiencing homelessness. Thank you for stepping up to the plate and grabbing the bull by the horns on the issue of the overflow of working with the medical community. Y'all are setting the example. You're doing well. As I've said before, I think one of the strengths of my position as mayor is that I was with you for 12 years. I understand the EOC. I understand the chain of command, especially during a state of emergency. And I think that's one of the reasons as well, Bryan, that you and I work so well together. And Vince, Reese, I cannot thank you. You two do a tremendous job. Bryan was right on with the day-to-day operations. Y'all have done a tremendous job. On a personal note, the Dailey family is taking advantage, getting out into both city and county parks and greenways, and they look great. So please tell the team over at Parks and Rec, and I continue to tell Reese and our team at Parks and Rec, they're doing a tremendous job, and it's great to see the citizens of Leon County getting out to both city and county parks and using the greenways and out hiking and biking and everything. So great job. And Vince, you're right. We're going into hurricane season. Wow, this is the double doozy, right? We're going to be experiencing COVID-19 and what looks like to be a pretty active storm system. Hey, we're committed. We know the system. We work well together, and we'll just take it as it comes.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, can I add one more thing that I had written down? I just wanted to mention very quickly that because it is a potential hotspot, I just wanted to mention to this group that the sheriff really has done an excellent job at the jail, and there are and have been zero cases, positive cases there, and they are just doing a very, very comprehensive, very thorough job out there. Again, I just raise it for this group because I know it's a potential concern, but we've been really impressed with their operation, and I just thought I'd mention it to you all.
Rocky, DeeDee, any questions for Bryan and Vince? A chance.
Good news, Vince. Our schools are empty, so we're ready for hurricane season.
There you go. There you go. Hey, Rocky, I'm here to tell you one more time. My greatest concern and challenge during all of this is trying to teach third grade math and fifth grade social studies to the Dailey boys. I am afraid that I am not cut out. I am not cut out for this role, but I'm doing the best job I can, my friend. Rocky, DeeDee, we'll turn it over to y'all. What's y'all been very active and busy and doing a great job over there at the school system.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a tremendous honor to be able to work with all of you. I participated yesterday on the OEV call. I guess that's the Office of Economic Vitality for those who may not be familiar with all of your acronyms. And it was mentioned that if there was ever a time when the interdependence of our business community, our local governments, city, county, sheriff's department, school district, were so intertwined, it is now. And so we are honored to be with you and your partner in this. And we're grateful for your leadership in the county. Bryan, all of you, thank you for that. The question that came up yesterday over and over, and we hear it a lot, is the biggest concern that businesses have about reopening Tallahassee is what does that mean for childcare? What if the kids aren't back in school? When are kids going back to school? And much like you, and much like President Thrasher mentioned, they're looking for leadership coming out of the Board of Governors and the governor's office. In our case, it is the governor's office and the Commissioner of Education. We obviously won't be making the decision to reopen schools until they take the lead on that. And then, and in conjunction with that, the health officials. We appreciate being able to interact with you all and with the healthcare community yesterday. Excuse me. Yesterday, the Department of Health and the presidents of TMH and TMRC were both on the call with great health updates. And so we appreciate that. And so like you, we are trying to follow the sage advice of people who are experts in the healthcare field. And we want to do our part to make sure that our students aren't doing anything to add to the spread, but rather to flatten the curve. And so we did, and I'll let the superintendent speak to this. We did, as you probably read in the paper, we did talk about a committee to reopen the schools. But I think in our case, it's a little bit unique in that, we have the academic components, a lot like what President Murdaugh said. The new normal in Leon County schools will probably not be going back to the old normal. It'll be a totally new track. And so we're trying to figure out how do we get on that track and what does that track look like? So moving forward, I think that, it's important for us to have cross-functional focus groups from the community that help us think about the business decisions, but the academic decisions, the food services, the buses, and by the way, and I'll make sure this is not taken out of context. This is a joke, but when you guys were talking about the scooters, one of our big challenges is how are we going to transport kids on the buses because they'll be too close to each other. So maybe the scooter industry could help us get the kids back and forth. But obviously, I'm just kidding. I think that we will figure this out together, and I appreciate the chance to be with you. And with that, I'll let the superintendent weigh in.
Rocky, y'all are doing a great job. DeeDee, thank you. The floor is yours, my man.
Just to add a little bit to Ms. Rasmussen's comments. First, we're two different animals when you compare us to the university system. They have kids coming from, out of state across the country, but we have, like to Ms. Rasmussen's point, the challenge of putting 50 or 60 kids on a school bus and practice social distancing. And there's a lot of uncertainty for us right now. We will not be making these decisions. It would be the governor and the Department of Education will give us guidance. I'm sure if we wanted to tighten, we could locally. I don't think we could open without their approval, but if we wanted to tighten or restrict more from what guidance we've been given, we would. And we're basically planning for all types of scenarios. First, fingers crossed, hopeful that we're back to normal and all in school on August 11th. Is that realistic? Probably not. I mean, you listen to what Florida State and those guys are saying. They're talking about 25% of their students returning, 75% not. I mean, it's just they're all over the place. But so our first scenario is everybody returns. We're back to normal. The second scenario is that we are continuing distance learning. 100% of our students are remain at home the middle of August, and we prop up our distance learning plan and kind of reassess what we did well, what we need to work on between now and August. The next scenario potentially is half in, half out, where if you say a large high school, child's high school, if they have 2,000 students, that 1,000 would be in school 1 week and 1,000 would be at home, and then you'd flip them where the other 1,000 would come back. So instead of having 2,000 in one spot, you'd only have 1,000 kids at one spot. So we're working around that. And then the scenario of we come back to school either all in or half in, and then we have a reoccurrence of the virus, an uptick of the virus, and we're sent home again in November or December. So with all that uncertainty, we're trying to plan the best we can, but there's just so many. Let's put it this way: I've worked in large high schools the vast majority of my career. You want to see the total opposite of social distancing. Go watch when the bell rings in between first and second period class. There's not a lot of social distancing, and I don't know how we address that or how we get around that. And to Ms. Rasmussen's point on the buses, I'd need 500 more buses, in order to put 10 kids on a bus at a time, or I'm having to do 18 different routes. And what do we do at lunchtime in the school cafeterias? Maybe we take the food back to their classrooms, and there's just so many unanswered questions. And I know that you're struggling with third grade math. You don't want to do it again next year. And you didn't get a raise, and you're not going to be rated highly effective as a teacher, and you want someone else to teach your kids next year, their teacher. But and we
Matt.
Yeah, but we want that to happen. But we said also from the beginning, we're going to rely on the healthcare experts to guide us through this. These will be decisions that will not be made at the local level, but by the governor. I mean, he wanted this job. Congratulations, you have it. And then moving forward with all of us working together to ensure that we're keeping our community safe. When it comes to the budget, we're doing just like you guys are. We're bracing for some serious cuts to our budget. Like you, we have not seen any of the CARES money. I'm glad Florida State and FAMU and higher institutions have. We locally with K-12 We haven't seen or been given really any word on what that will look like for us. We know that 3/4 of the state's revenue is generated from sales tax. Every day that Mickey Mouse is at home is not good for the state of Florida, and not to mention we have a half-penny sales tax to help support capital projects, technology, maintenance here with our school system. And if 100,000 kids aren't here buying stuff at a bar and whatever, we aren't generating sales tax revenue. If Florida State doesn't play football in the fall, so and that's about $22 million just on the sales tax side for us. So, what are we looking like there? So there's a lot of uncertainty. We're planning for everything as far as, the academic piece and the budget piece. We're going to try our very best, like you all, not to add to the high unemployment numbers, to try to keep as many of our folks as possible employed, and working. But we also know that we've been paying, a large number of our staff has been at home, but we have paid and made a financial commitment to pay those employees through the end of the month of June, through the end of the fiscal year. We are going to slowly on Monday start bringing some of our frontline people who cannot work remotely, maintenance staff, custodial staff, administrative support staff back to our sites. We were going to do it when the governor started phase 1, but in abundance of caution, we decided to wait 2 weeks. But on Monday, we're going to slowly start bringing some of those folks back to get the lawns mowed and the schools cleaned and get things ready, because we have been vacant. It's been a ghost town for, since March the 13th. So, and especially then since April 1st, when he sent we just stay at home order came out. So it's working around all those things. One thing that President Murdaugh said, though, Mr. Mayor and Vince and Bryan, is that this access thing is real. And if there's any way as a community we can address that issue, because to President Murdaugh's point, we can get devices and we can make a monetary commitment to help get devices. This access thing, look, I can retrofit school buses. We can cut deals with Comcast and CenturyLink and all. But if there's a way for us as a community to look at this issue to ensure that all of our residents have connectivity, that would really help us in closing that digital divide and the accessibility for our 34,000 school children, and many of them they just don't have access. So anything we can do would be great. You all can do to help us with that would be greatly appreciated. He mentioned something also about workforce development at Lively, and a lot of these classes, we're trying our very best to deliver an online platform. The university system has been doing that for a lot longer, and those kids in the universities are adapted and set up to shift a lot easier than an 8-year-old at an elementary school is. But with workforce, we're in the same dilemma as President Murdaugh with doing practicals for our nursing students, our welding guys coming back. They really need to be hands-on. The department has made some exceptions for students, less than 10 students at a time, to come back to get those practicals done. And we've been in the food distribution business now for the last 2 months. We've given out over 200,000 meals to children in our community, breakfast and lunch. And we know a lot of our kids are relying on those meals to have some nutrition throughout the course of the day. We have a great relationship with Four Rivers here locally, who is helping us with the Department of Agriculture, Robin Safley and her team. And we're going to continue to do that and we also have a great partnership with Second Harvest. We've given them some facility space and storage space, and we're using our sites to host distribution centers. But like you, right now it's just all the uncertainty. We have 2.5 weeks to the end of it. We're trying to make it to the finish line of May 29th with our kids and our teachers. Like the university system, we had to turn on a dime. Here we stood out in front of the city hall on March the 12th, and I said all the kids are coming back. And then March the 13th, I said, just kidding, they're not coming back. But all in all, I'm very proud of the effort from our school board and leadership with Ms. Rasmussen and her vast experience. She's been through this budget crisis before, so I've really leaned in on her and her expertise, and developing this work group to look at all different aspects of what reopening school would look like here in our community. And then when the governor gives the green light, or they say, okay, go, whatever that looks like, that we also included other stakeholders that can help give us advice. So that's kind of all I got.
Yeah, look, we all have our challenges to face, and I could not imagine, the decisions that y'all have to make in regards to the tens of thousands of students and their safety and how to navigate that. In fact, Rocky, DeeDee, let me congratulate you on having your working group to help assist you in reopening. I'll talk a little bit in a second about the city and what our plan is. We're not putting together a working group, but I completely appreciate and support the fact that y'all have done that to be able to move forward. And I think that was a very good move. That's a very technical aspect of how we go about educating the kids. Y'all done a tremendous job, and we appreciate it. We really do. Any questions for the school district?
I just want to add one thing if nobody has any questions. Yesterday on the OEV call, the question about childcare came up. And I commented that, we can figure out how to teach kids virtually if we can get the bandwidth. We can figure out how to teach them virtually, but we can't figure out childcare virtually. And parents are worried about not being able to go back to work if they have to take care of their children while teaching virtually or putting them in front of a screen. And the conversation turned to summer camps. And so, the superintendent has said, at least thus far, we don't see a way clear to open our school-based summer camps. I think the city and county, I think you guys have likewise said, but just to know that is something that a lot of families are struggling with right now. And we may make it through the summer, but then if, like the superintendent said, if we're in August and we're still looking at a virtual platform for teaching and learning, the childcare issue becomes an economic issue again. And so the parks was one point. The food distribution is another that obviously we may, need your support with, because that's not our, we want and need to be able to feed our children. And because a hungry child doesn't learn or thrive. And so we understand that, but that obviously is not our primary mission or budget item. And so we may need some help with that at some point. And we're really grateful for the Department of Agriculture and Second Harvest and the leadership of all the governmental entities that have helped us, or private and nonprofit entities that have helped, prop us up on that. We're doing everything we can do, including the buses with the hot spots. But that's where our partnership, we may need to ask for some help at some point.
Understood. Vince? Yeah. I think you're muted, Vince.
How about that? Am I there?
Yes, sir.
You were just mentioning, I'll send after this call too. We just did an analysis that was on the previous county commission meeting last Tuesday on daycare in the community, and sort of an inventory of what everyone's doing out there, including some of the efforts of the Early Learning Coalition and others. And I'll share that with you all as well. It's just information, but it was really instructive to know what others just right outside of our immediate lane are doing in the community to deal with those issues. And again, I'd be happy to send that to you guys. And also, the thing that plays in really importantly here is the whole FERCA and people's ability through the federal government to continue to get paid if they have to stay home to take care of kids, and which is a pretty unheard of benefit. It doesn't obviously address the full need, but it is very significant. But I'll share that after this call. I'll share that agenda item that we just did on that.
Great, thank you.
And just one other thing, and I just because I can't not bring it up. It's another thing that I'm sure doesn't. I know it doesn't begin to address the full need. But when you talk about the connectivity, we have mobile hotspots at the library that we check out, which under normal circumstances addresses the need that's generally out there. Needless to say, under this circumstance, it doesn't even come close in terms of the numbers that we have. But I'll be making some recommendations later in the budget because there's no new money. It will be to reprioritize library dollars to expand those mobile hotspots and make that more available in the community. And so I just wanted to mention that since you all were referring to that as well.
Good point. Good point. On the city side, I'm going to let Reese kind of give an update. I mean, we don't have any new information besides what's already been printed in the media about our parks and everything, and our continuity of service. Let me just chime in and say, first of all, I think it's wonderful that we all are on the same page with our public message. And my main concern right now is that society starts to relax a little too much. And we still need to keep up with the message of, hey, folks, by no means are we out of the woods. We've got to maintain social distancing, still try to limit your trips as much as you possibly can. Wear your mask when you're out and about, because if we do start relaxing, that's when we're going to get in some hot water, along with all the other issues that we're dealing with. The only other thing that I'll touch on too is that I'm sure, and again, Rocky and DeeDee, you all have moved forward, and I think it's appropriate with the school district to have a reopening Blue Ribbon Committee, and I commend you for doing that. Bryan and Vince, I don't know exactly what your plans are, but let me tell you our thoughts at the city. We have a plan. We have a plan internally on how we go about, opening up our parks, opening up our facilities. All of our decisions are based on the medical recommendation of our local data here. Anytime we do anything, we check in, just like I know you all do, Vince and Bryan, and y'all do, Rocky and DeeDee. And we say, hey, this is what we want to do. This is what we're allowed to do under the governor's executive order of phase 1 or whatever announcements are to come. Does the medical community support this, and does the data support it? And if so, we move forward. We get questions all the time about, well, are you going to set up a Blue Ribbon Committee to reopen the private sector? And my answer is clear. If the governor makes an announcement and our local data supports it, we're going to do it. We're going to move right there along with the governor's office as long as our medical data supports it and it's the right decision for us. I don't necessarily feel that we need a committee to make those redundant recommendations. The plan is simple. We wait for the governor's order to come through. We all communicate with what's going on here locally. We check in with the medical community, and if it's the right decision, we do that. So with that, Reese, you want to just give a brief update on where we are with some of the.
Yes, sir. Can everybody hear me? Good. I think the mayor froze for just a second. I'll jump in and Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to underscore what you said, because that is, I believe, the bedrock of our plan and how we fit together calls like this, getting together. And it's certainly my pleasure to be with the group to make sure we're in close coordination. I think this is a 1,000-piece puzzle that we all fit together in some way. And I think our consistency is important. We fit together not just locally, but with our state and with our nation. And I think the decisions we make must be coordinated in that fashion. And the mayor mentioned, and Vince and I, for example, we communicate frequently, probably more frequently than either one of us would like to do at this point, but it's necessary to make sure that we're well coordinated and we're stepping through this appropriately. I've said this many times. I've heard Vince say it. I think I've heard the superintendent say it. We probably all said it. There is no timetable. What we do know, though, is we will be at this for months, if not a year, if not more. The chairman said that earlier, Chairman Desloge. We don't know how long this will last. And so that sets the framework for how we're approaching this. Most recently, we announced that we were very cautiously reopening some of our recreation activities, and that may seem insignificant, but we were trying to parse out those things that we had turned off that we felt could be done safely. And really the common denominator was those activities that could be done outside of large groups. And I find that to be probably the most consistent distinction that I'm seeing in terms of what we're doing and what others are doing. Leon County Schools, I know you're worried about the gathering of many children and faculty as you come back together. We know this is a phased approach, and we're in the very early stages. We're getting the guidance from our federal government, from our CDC, from our state to say, hey, let's avoid crowds of 10 or more. That's where we are right now, regardless of what the activity may be. And so we're following that very closely and very cautiously, even as we move into the next phase. Most people would refer to as phase 2. even then we know crowds of 50 or more would be frowned upon, if not prohibited. And so I think that informs us. Chairman Rasmussen, you talked about the summer camps. We knew that we would be deep into the summer at best before a restriction of 50 or more was lifted. We felt like that was pretty obvious to us. So we wanted to make sure we were clear on where we were headed. When we get past that, I don't know. And I think that would be generally accepted as phase 3. So that kind of overlays where we're headed. Vince mentioned the EOC and the emergency coordinating. We're doing that every day. We're paying attention to today, but clearly with an eye on tomorrow with no particular time frame. So I just share all that because that goes into our thought process, and we're obviously coordinating closely. We talked about our medical, everybody's mentioned our medical experts. They will ultimately, in my opinion, give us the best guidance. What the state does, that allows us to move forward, but then doesn't make sense for Tallahassee. And I will tell you, so far, so good. I think that we probably as a community have fared better than most. Maybe we're just lucky. I don't know. I would like to think it's, good decision making, and our community has embraced the right ideas. But as the mayor said over and over and over, let's not let that slip away. Let's continue to do the right things. And so we're going to be cautious. From a management point of view, the superintendent mentioned it earlier. He's bringing some of his staff back that have been, kind of on standby, if you will, probably the best word you can use. And at the city, we have rotated our workforce and done everything we can to protect the workforce so we can deliver services every day. Now we're rolling back out of that rotation. We're going to be doing screening and scanning to make sure that we do everything possible to keep everybody safe, but we must continue to provide services to our community, public safety services, utility services, transit services, you name it. There's an article in the paper maybe last week about just solid waste services. The most rudimentary things we must be able to do. And so we're very mindful of how do we keep staff safe, but keep operating. And I think so far so good, but that will be a challenge. I've told the city workforce that I support telework to the fullest extent possible, because I think that keeps the risk of spread down, because that's where you may have some congregation of people, some density of workforce. I think that may help if we're in a virtual setting for school in the fall, or at least in some limited, that people maybe can juggle their schedules a little bit if they can telework. That's not everybody, but I think that may help to some degree. So those are the things on our mind. Clearly, we're, Mr. Mayor, as you know, we're talking every day about the fiscal impact. I have confidence that we will find our way through it, but it will not be without modification. We know that. We know there are some things that we have to do that are not necessarily connected to revenue sources, and we'll have to do those things, and we will. We are committed to doing that. But life next year, I'm certain, does not look like the way we started this year. And so, Mr. Mayor, if you have any other items you want me to put more detail on, I'll be happy to.
I don't. Does anybody have any questions about what we're doing over at the city? Mr. Administrator, I'd just like to note for the record that 2 of the 3 administrators of our local governments have COVID beards, and I'm wondering if you plan on growing out the beard and mustache as well, sir. You're muted, I'm afraid.
There's a good reason for that, as you can see. This is the moneymaker right here. And those guys, they go.
Vince has a face made for radio, right?
That's right.
With all the seriousness, it's good to know we can still share a joke and take a deep breath. Hey, I want to thank y'all. I know this was a little bit longer than our usual meetings. We went an hour and 15 minutes. I think it's really important for us to stay in touch. I think it also sends a very clear message to the public. Let me just state, I enjoy working with each and every one of you, and I think that y'all are doing a great job, and I believe in you. Thank you. And so we'll just,
Mr. Mayor,
and we'll go from there. DeeDee, yes, ma'am.
and I just want to say, because I may not have done it at the beginning, I think we all, feel like we've got 30 seconds to cram in everything we need to say. So I want to back up for just a second and just thank you, because I remember at the very beginning of this, when everything was shut down, and I don't know if it was the city or the county, I apologize, but you guys had people out mowing the grass. And I thought, well, thank goodness. I mean, there's no harm in that. They're by themselves with a mask on. And, garbage pickup, my goodness, I bet that's gone up 5 times, right? Since everybody's been at home. And so you guys have found a way to go back to the basics and keep fundamental services going that makes life at home so much more comfortable. So thank you, because I've never spent this much time at home ever. I'm pretty sure. So, that's what you guys are doing, is making this possible for our families to help their children learn and for our community to thrive. So let me back up and I wish I had said that first. I really, really appreciate what you're doing. I have and please don't think, I think our or the superintendent's recommendation about the Blue Ribbon Committee is not that anybody else should have such a committee. It's just that we have so many different stakeholder groups that really want to have a voice. They need to know that they're at the table. We have, parents with special needs kids. They need to know that their concerns are being addressed. So we've got like maybe 13 different focus groups, I think, for, there's all the arts teachers that just, oh my gosh, are we going to get cut? So we've just got so many different, not that you don't. I'm just saying we are stakeholders. When you're a parent, your kid is the first thing, right? If you're going to defend your child, no matter what. So whether the garbage gets picked up or not, your kid better be okay. So our stakeholders tend to be a little bit perhaps more passionate. So it's important that they feel connected and a part of the decision making. And I think I'm speaking out of turn, Mr. Superintendent, but that's my take on why we feel we need those kinds of things happening, and you probably don't.
I think it's the right move. And DeeDee, thank you for your kind words. I think I can speak for Bryan. I give Reese and Vince full credit, obviously, for the day-to-day operations at the city and the county and the fine work that the men and women on the front lines do. It would be inappropriate for us to take credit for that. They're the ones out there doing it, and Vince and Reese have done a great job putting it all together.
I would echo that. And DeeDee, it's interesting. We never stopped. I mean, people go, so how did the public works people on both sides, the parks and rec people to a large degree, the waste the waste management, I mean, everything continued with some new parameters. So it's been interesting. So,
walking in the parks has been my salvation. And interesting, the other day, and I've seen it through the whole time, because I like to go walk as long as it's at least relatively cool outside, which is another thing on my gratitude list. But walking in the parks, and I've noticed recently neighbors have been putting up no parking signs because the parking lots at the trailheads have been full and overflowing into, so that's great. You see more people wanting to get out, but appropriately socially distanced and in the sun and in the free air, and exercising. So that's for the health of our community. So thank you for that.
It's been really great watching people discover new places in the community.
Oh, I've found more parks.
I agree.
I've found more new places I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I agree. So, in closing, Bryan, we have the running joke. You and I got elected 13 and a half years ago together. And we were talking the other day about the fact that in 13 and a half years, we've been through 3 hurricanes, the Great Recession, now a global pandemic. Well, Bryan, as of 2.5 weeks ago, we can add a tornado on Veldary Road onto our list now too, right?
I used to have hair.
All right, everybody, have a good one, and let's stay in touch.
All right.
Thank you.
See you guys.